What is God? You would think this question would receive a lot of attention throughout philosophical history. Yet, because our culture is so saturated with the idea of God, we often take for granted that everyone knows what the term means. Few topics are so divisive as the existence of God or how God wants us to behave. But why have we stopped pondering the question beneath it all? What is God? What does the term God mean? To whom or what does the term God refer? Are we talking about some sort of superhuman figures like Zeus and Thor who can use magic lightning powers and are immortal, sort of? Or are we talking about me? Or maybe you? Or heck, maybe even the whole universe? The purpose of this video is to attempt to meaningfully define the word God, to show what God is, but also to show what God is not. That way, regardless of whether or not you believe God exists, you'll be able to have much more meaningful conversations. My name's Ricky, and it's now time to wonder again. Let's get right to it. We'll start off with a case study of our good friend, the king of the gods, Zeus. As the legends go, Zeus was born in the caves on the island of Crete at a particular moment in the past, though we don't know exactly when. Thus, he's a temporal being. He's within time. Even if he can never die, he's just immortal. He's not eternal. Similarly, Zeus is also particularly located in space, at Mount Olympus. Though he can travel as he pleases, he's still only in one place at once. Zeus can also be tricked and deceived, as we see in the story of Prometheus. And though he's very powerful, he still must struggle and fight against the other gods and the Titans. Perhaps most importantly, Zeus is contingent. He's dependent upon other things for his existence. We probably all share the intuition that no matter how cool his lightning bolt is, Zeus is not a rational notion of God. But why is that? Well, to start, let's consider this definition of God offered by a theologian and philosopher from the 11th century named Anselm. He defines God as the greatest conceivable being. This doesn't have to be our only definition for the rest of the video, but it is very helpful in revealing what about Zeus makes him so obviously not God. But Anselm's definition leads us to another important question. What makes things great in the first place? Is greatness an objective quality that can be measured? If you've been in academic circles, you might have heard these things referred to as great-making properties. Philosophers have been discussing this for millennia, and by no means do I intend to settle this discussion here. We might be able to gain some insight, though, by going back to Zeus and seeing how we might make him greater. We already established that Zeus is temporal, he's spatial, he's powerful, but he's trickable, and he's a contingent being. I'm sure you're starting to notice the point. These are all very human properties. So how would we make Zeus less human and more God? Well, it would be a good start to replace his temporality with eternality. Something that exists at all moments in time seems greater than something that does not. Next, we ought to do the same with space. Something confined to one particular location does not seem as great as something that is present everywhere. A being with unlimited power is clearly greater than a being with limited power, just as clearly as an unstoppable force is greater than a, stoppable force. Likewise, Zeus would be stronger, he would be greater, if he wasn't vulnerable to deception. So, whatever we mean by God ought to be omniscient, all-knowing, incapable of being deceived. If you recall, Zeus was actually born. His father's the Titan Cronus, and his mother's the Titan Rhea. His existence is, in a very significant way, dependent upon them. A being would be greater if it depended on nothing, or at least nothing outside of itself. We didn't touch on this so much earlier, but Zeus's actions are sometimes morally questionable. Philosophers have always seen some connection between greatness and virtue, so our conception of God should be all good, maximally virtuous, or what we can call omnibenevolent. When you place these models of God side by side, it becomes very obvious why Zeus is not what we're talking about when we say God. What we just did was an exercise in what's called perfect being theology. And philosophers have been doing this since the time of the ancient Greeks. Plato had his maximally great form of the good, and Aristotle reasoned his way to an unmoved mover, a first cause of all things. The Christian tradition quickly embraced this line of thinking, with people like Augustine and Boethius and Anselm and Aquinas echoing their thought. Our key takeaway from perfect being theology is that whatever we mean by God ought to be perfect, and it should be sufficiently distinct from humans and superhuman figures like Zeus and the other Greek gods. One difficulty that perfect being theology faces is its inherent subjectivity. What seems perfect to me may not seem perfect to someone else. For example, there's an ongoing debate within Christianity whether or not it is better for God to be completely outside of time or able to experience temporal succession. The classical theists argue that God is not just present at every moment in time, but as time's creator, he's completely outside of it, and to put God within time would make him a prisoner. But the neoclassical theists, amongst others, argue that God is still eternal because he's present at all points in time, but he still experiences succession from moment to moment. Both sides hold to all previously mentioned perfections, all the omni attributes, moral perfection, and the necessity and aseity of God. So, while this method is helpful in laying the groundwork for any coherent model of God, we probably shouldn't appeal to it to settle every dispute. Nonetheless, it does leave us with some important takeaways. Namely, that you or I or any other contingent thing can't be God. By God, we're in some way referring to the foundation of all reality. And that's not me, and it's not you either. And it's probably not Zeus or any of those other guys as well. And from all we know right now, it's not the universe either. It began to exist a finite time ago, and all natural events are dependent upon the events that happened prior to them, making them all fully contingent, not necessary. If we're going to find something foundational, necessary, self-existent, it seems that we're going to have to look beyond the universe to something like the classical notion of God. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep wondering.